Harper sat dumbfounded on her creaky couch, her finger trembling above her phone screen. The shock enveloping her felt cold, like a rogue freeze setting in an unexpected spring. Just moments ago, she had stared at her bank statement, disbelieving. Her entire savings, painstakingly amassed penny by penny, year after grinding year in the bustling city of Birchtown, had disappeared. In the kitchen, the aroma of coffee mingled with Harper's simmering anger. Lydia, Harper's mother, barely lifted her gaze from the steaming mug. "Calm down, Harper," she said with a nonchalant air. "It was for something special." The room tilted slightly as Harper's breath hitched. "Something special?" She choked out, her disbelief sticking in her throat. Nolan, her mother's husband, sat beside Lydia, swirling his coffee with a flourish, his smirk a banner of indifference. "The anniversary celebration," Lydia said dismissively, as if she had merely spent loose change. Understanding hit Harper like a gust of icy wind. "You spent it all on that party?" Her voice shook, once again crashing upon the reality of betrayal. That money was for her future home, a dream, a promise of stability that she'd nurtured as diligently as a gardener tending to a delicate seedling. Nolan's laughter was a cold slap. "We're your guardians, Harper. You don't owe us anything." Her heart sank as Harper bore the brunt of a familiar resentment. Since she was 12, after her father had passed away, her existence had been shaded with this very dynamic. Her father had left behind more than memories. He entrusted Lydia with an inheritance meant to cradle Harper into adulthood. It seemed that trust had been misplaced. Years had slid by with Harper biting her tongue as Lydia used what should have been sacred funds for urgent needs or to patch up Nolan's frivolous financial fissures. But this was betrayal painted in broad strokes. Nearly $25,000 siphoned away for gaudy decorations and lavish catering meant to impress faces that barely mattered. Compelled by a mix of fury and despair, Harper found her voice, a fierce demand for restitution. Lydia's dismissive demeanor, punctuated by the clang of her cup meeting the table, fanned the flames of Harper's resolve. Nolan piped in, his satisfaction apparent as he reframed responsibility with slippery words, justifying their actions under the guise of a twisted perception of family obligation. Harper's world spun as both her conscience and her sense of justice battled to reconcile this theft. With each word, the illusion of family they perpetuated shattered, a kaleidoscope of broken trust. "I'm calling it theft," she declared, fueled by a new undercurrent of strength despite the quiver in her voice. "And I'm done letting it go," she added, as Lydia shrugged indifferently, sipping her coffee, each gesture a dismissal of Harper's dream like it was a mere whimsy. The moment Harper exited Lydia and Nolan's home, the world outside felt sharper. The chill of the autumn evening bit into her skin as her emotions crystallized, rendering them almost as icy as the crisp air she exhaled. Sierra, Harper's steadfast friend, became her lifeline as Harper spilled every detail in a torrent of words. The small apartment walls listened too, reflecting her rising resolve. "They're unbelievable," Sierra exclaimed, her disbelief a balm to Harper's festering wounds. "They've always seen me as their safety net," Harper replied, hardness infusing her tone. "A resource to tap into when it suits them." Sierra's compassionate silence lent Harper space to forge her plan in the fires of newfound determination. This time, silence was not an option. Her inner compass, one she'd inherited from her father's resilience, pointed squarely towards justice. "I'm getting my money back," she affirmed, steadying herself. Even if her pursuit demanded engaging the authorities, she realized that retribution wouldn't just reclaim her financial loss, it would declare her independence from a dysfunctional loyalty masquerading as family duty. Bracing herself for the challenge ahead, Harper felt invigorated by a fierce clarity. Sheltering family in a charade of harmony was over. Lydia and Nolan had crossed an irrevocable line, and the rules of their game were about to change, starting now. The dawn light crept through the blinds, casting a pale glow across the room as Harper resolved that today would mark the beginning of the fight. She stirred awake with a newfound clarity, the sting of betrayal reframed as a call to action. Determined, she picked up the phone and called Silverbank, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the armrest as she waited. A gruff voice finally met her inquiry on the other end. As she suspected, Lydia had drained the account using an ancient joint authorization, one Lydia had inveigled Harper into maintaining for emergencies many years prior. Only 2 weeks before the Lavish anniversary event, Lydia had emptied the entire savings without a word of warning. Harper's pulse quickened as she asked the bank manager for verification, each word edged with disbelief. "It's a gray area," came the cautious reply, obliging her with legal nuances. Despite the technicality of access, there was potential here, especially if she could demonstrate the funds were earmarked explicitly for Harper's future. She thanked him, logging every detail he provided, the notes becoming her armor for the battles ahead. Feeling a bit more fortified, Harper's next call was to Brooke Whitaker, a savvy attorney whom Sierra had enthusiastically recommended over a lively coffee catch-up. Brooke's confidence was infectious as Harper laid out the story, the misappropriated funds, Lydia's unapologetic stance, and her own sense of wounded justice. With empathy and determination, Brooke outlined Harper's options, seeing not just an ethical violation, but a potentially criminal one. Harper felt a spark of hope flicker as Brooke delineated the steps. First, we need to file that police report to keep things official, Brooke advised, converting the plan into swift action. Then comes the formal demand for repayment. If necessary, we're prepared to escalate. As she considered involving law enforcement, a sliver of discomfort twisted in Harper's gut. Yet, the sacrifices and relentless work she endured, extra hours spent, vacations bypassed, all to solidify her financial future, hardened her resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming money, it was about reclaiming herself. At the police station, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Harper recounted her ordeal to an officer, careful not to miss a single detail Brooke had diligently assembled into a comprehensive dossier. The officer listened intently, jotting down notes, his fingers grazing a keyboard. "So, your stepmother accessed your account unauthorized and used those funds personally," he summarized, ready to initiate the wheels of justice. "Yes," Harper confirmed, her resolve echoing in her voice. "She did it for a party without my knowledge." A determined nod from the officer signaled the start of the investigation. "This is unauthorized use of funds. We'll proceed to open a case," he advised, coordinating with Brooke, ensuring that every action was streamlined through their collaborative effort. As Harper stepped out into the bright light of day, a fresh resolve bolstered her spirit. No longer was she the silent bystander, acquiescing to misdeeds cloaked as family obligations. The recompense was on the horizon. The consequences came rolling in swiftly. Barely 2 days later, Lydia's voice crackled with fury over the phone. "What is this madness?" Lydia demanded, outrage stark against the situation she had crafted. "The police just confronted us about your so-called savings." "It's straightforward," Harper replied, calm and steady. "You stole from me, so now you face the consequences." Lydia's scoff reverberated through the receiver. "Don't be absurd, Harper. It's family money meant for all of us." "No," Harper cut in, her voice laced with the gravity of lost trust. "That was my fund, safeguarded by Dad for my future. You had no right." Nolan's dismissive tone, echoing from somewhere in the background, mocked her too. "Really? You're serious about taking this to court?" "If pushed, I will," she asserted, knowing they'd forced this conflict upon themselves. Dismissing Harper's resolve with a bitter laugh, Lydia countered, "You're overreacting. Do you think this will actually get you anywhere?" Harper's simple response rang finality into the conversation. "We'll find out soon enough." Concurrently, Brooke maneuvered in the background like an unyielding tactician. She had already dispatched a demand letter asserting the debt and stipulating a repayment deadline. Their predictable defiance strengthened their precarious position. "They're resisting," Brooke pointed out during their next meeting, a readiness brimming beneath her professional exterior. "And if they persist, it escalates." "But Harper, don't worry, they're cornering themselves." With the police reports and bank records reinforcing her position, Harper felt more equipped than ever. The truth was now laid plain, a barrier of evidence standing between what Lydia and Nolan had done and what justice demanded. In the early blush of dawn, Harper found herself smiling, an involuntary, knowing smile that bore the weight of 6 years of patience and silent endurance. Today marked the start of a new chapter, one where she'd emerged not as a victim, but as a warrior reclaiming her own narrative. For far too long, Lydia and her husband, Nolan, had basked in their illusion of control, assuming her young age and status as a part-time librarian in Kennington would leave her powerless. They were wrong. The previous week, Nolan had flaunted their anniversary soiree on social media. The photograph, him with a raised champagne glass, Lydia dazzling in her rented couture, sent a current of betrayal coursing through Harper. Attached was a saccharine caption about making cherished memories with loved ones, a mockery as bitter as it was transparent. "Revel while you can," Harper murmured, her fingers deftly saving the image. It would join the arsenal Brooke Whittaker had been assembling, each piece tightening the noose legally being drawn around her family's carefree revelry. When Harper presented the photo to Brooke later, her attorney couldn't suppress a wry grin. "They just handed us the last element on our platter," Brooke quipped, her eyes mirroring Harper's fierce determination. This battle, it seemed, had turned in their favor. 7 days fluttered by, but the buzz of her phone that morning jolted Harper with electric excitement. Brooke's voice carried over the line with a victorious edge. "The papers are served. They've now officially been brought up as defendants. The police are also issuing a formal notice of investigation." Harper closed her eyes briefly, savoring the sensation of justice setting its first roots. "How do you think they'll handle it?" she asked, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Brooke's response was tinged with satisfaction. "Panic, likely. People under pressure either become more reckless or they buckle." Lydia, exhibiting signs of the described panic, called Harper that afternoon. Her tone, an uneasy blend of desperation laced with defensiveness, conveyed a frantic state of mind. "Harper, are you seriously pursuing this?" she implored, disbelief underscoring her words. "You drag us through legal proceedings over a misunderstanding." The familial strings tugged against Harper's resolve, but she remained steadfast. "This wasn't some small slip-up, Lydia. You appropriated what wasn't yours and expected me to meekly accept it." "We didn't take it," Lydia retorted, her voice tinged with irritation. "We borrowed it for everyone's benefit, for our family celebration. You should feel honored." Harper couldn't help letting out an incredulous, dry chuckle. "Proud of a celebration flaunting the fruit of my labor while I rebuild my savings from scratch? No, Lydia, that's not family. It's sheer selfishness." Nolan's voice soon barreled into the conversation with its usual condescending air. "You're exaggerating, sweetheart. No one's going to support you on this. Parents do everything for their children. Isn't it fair for you to return the favor with some gratitude?" Her response was honed from years of pent-up frustration. "Gratitude? For robbing me under the guise of generosity? No, the only thing I owe you is a hard look at the mirror of accountability." The evening came, calm on the outside, but within Lydia and Nolan's suburban facade, a storm brewed as police officers knocked on their door. They delivered not an arrest, but a formal inquiry, yet Harper couldn't help but imagine their bewildered expressions. Later, Lydia reached out once more, her voice now fragile, pleading for clemency. "Harper, please. Did you have to bring in the police? We can settle this amicably." Harper remembered the dismissive laughter, the condescending shrugs, the dismissal. "Talking's been tried," she reminded, tone firm, "and yet you told me to forget it, as if my effort was mere dust. It's beyond me now." Her mother's words, please laced with irony, struck like an unexpected gust. "This can destroy us. Is that truly what you desire for your own mother?" Harper's breath hitched with a riposte as sharp as a honed blade. "I didn't bring this upon you, Lydia. Your choices did." A week later, at a polished mediation table, they faced each other, the duality of family now fully exposed. Brooke sat confidently by Harper's side, her presence a steadfast beacon of reassurance. Lydia and Nolan appeared transformed, gone was the confidence, replaced by uneasy resignation. The mediator, a composed man with gentle eyes and a composed demeanor, prepared to navigate the stormy waters of betrayal. We are here to address the unauthorized depletion of Harper's funds and to establish an equitable resolution, he announced, setting the agenda. Harper, now holding the reins in both form and spirit, offered a nod of acknowledgement. The time had come. She would speak for the silenced truths and lay bare the essence of her tale. In the heart of a bustling courtroom, Harper steeled herself, drawing strength from deep wells of determination as she prepared to face the storm she'd braved for so long. Today, she would dismantle the facade Lydia and Nolan, her stepfather, had erected over years of emotional manipulation. The fight was no longer about reclaiming her lost savings alone, but reclaiming her agency. "I've saved for years," Harper began, her voice unwavering under the fluorescent lights. Her words cut through the tension as she recounted the story of how the savings intended for her dream home had vanished to fund an extravagant celebration. Her eyes met those of the mediator, who silently encouraged her persistence. "When I asked for their return, Lydia and Nolan not only refused, but mocked my efforts. I'm here to reclaim what's mine." Lydia's attempt to interrupt was met with a gentle but firm gesture from the mediator. "You'll have your turn, Mrs. Hargrove," he assured, allowing Harper to continue unimpeded. When the platform was Lydia's, she wove a shaky, defensive narrative. "We never meant harm, only believed it would be better for the family to celebrate. Harper's young, with time to save again." "We misjudged her reaction," she stated, trying to excuse their actions with flailing justifications. Brooke, Harper's advocate, intervened with laser focus. Her voice cut through Lydia's deflections. "Misunderstanding doesn't cover emptying her savings without her permission and dismissing her concerns. That's theft, plain and simple." Nolan started to offer a retort, but the mediator interceded before words could take purchase. "Let's focus on the facts," he commanded calmly. "Evidence shows the funds were intended for Harper. Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, your options are clear. Repay in full or face a civil and potentially criminal case." Lydia's facade of confidence crumbled visibly, her face a canvas of crimson frustration. "We don't have the funds available," she protested, revealing the short-sightedness of their indulgence. The mediator nodded, unswayed. "Then you'll need to figure it out to avoid further legal actions." Nolan's logic finally sparked, and he leaned in with a proposition stitched in desperation. "What if we agree to a payment plan?" His tone was lower, reduced to seeking leniency. Brooke arched an eyebrow, acknowledging the concession. "That could be viable," she agreed, "but ultimately, Harper decides." Harper recognized them now, not as guardians, but as flawed individuals faced with their own making. Holding her ground, she responded, "A payment plan will work, but it must be set in stone. Miss a payment, and we're back at square one." Their exhausted assent signaled an end to their bravado, shadows of their once imposing personas. Leaving the mediation room, Brooke placed a supportive hand on Harper's shoulder. "You did great," she told her. The weight that lingered so long on Harper's spirit had finally begun to lift. By the time the ink dried on their agreement later that day, Harper walked away lighter, not just because of the compensation, but because she had stood up for herself. The relief was tangible as Brooke later handed her a document, ensuring the approved payments would flow directly into her account. "They miss even one," she added, "and we're ready to strike." "Thanks for everything you've done," Harper expressed sincerely. Brooke's support had been unwavering, a steadying force in chaotic seas. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." "You did the heavy lifting," Brooke reassured. "I just made sure the system worked as it should." The first installment appeared a week later, a portion of her hard-fought reclamation finding its way home. Despite not being the complete sum, it was a balm to her festering wounds. That evening, Sierra arrived with celebratory takeout and a clinking bottle. "Here's to never being a doormat again," she toasted. "To standing my ground," Harper echoed, glasses meeting with a satisfying chime. Their conversation floated over shared victories and newfound understandings. For so long, she'd been conditioned to value Lydia and Nolan's needs over her own. The ordeal had reframed her perspective, affirming the indisputable necessity of boundaries. If not her, then who would advocate for her? Days rolled by before the phone buzzed with Lydia's name on display again. Her voice carried an unfamiliar hesitancy. "Harper, I was just checking in," she said with a casual undertone, as if a legal battleground hadn't just passed between them. Harper's silence hung, a neutral pause designed to unsettle. "Is this about the payments?" she asked, maintaining an even tone. "No," Lydia replied, her protest too swift to be genuine. "I wanted to see how you're doing." Harper didn't buy it, not for one fleeting second. Her mother's professed concern felt as substantive as breath in the wind, and she remained resolute, anchored in the truth they had uncovered. For the first time, Harper felt untouchable, like she'd unshackled herself from a past of manipulation and guilt. The caller ID read Lydia, but this conversation would be on her terms. Lydia's voice crackled with uncertainty, realizing she could no longer sway Harper with old tactics. "I'm doing well," Harper stated calmly, "and I expect the payment on schedule." An awkward breath hung between them before Lydia ventured, "We're family, Harper. I hope you find it in your heart to forgive us." Harper remained silent. Forgiveness didn't dance to Lydia's tune. It was on her own terms, and it was a journey, not a destination dictated by obligation. "I have to go," she said, firmly ending the call. In the weeks that followed, Harper pivoted towards her future, resolute as ever. She adjusted her meticulously planned budget, picked up extra shifts at her marketing job, and allowed herself to indulge in the dream she once deemed out of reach, the dream of owning a home. Each deposit into her account, courtesy of Lydia and Nolan's restitution payments, felt like a small triumph, affirmations of her newfound independence and strength. This was not revenge, it was the justice of reclaiming her narrative and dignity. Months slipped by, and as Harper scrolled through real estate listings on the shimmering screen of her laptop, a flicker of optimism danced in her heart. Her savings account was slowly revitalizing, fueled by her relentless effort and the obligatory payments from Lydia and Nolan. One listing captured her attention, a cozy bungalow nestled on Ashgrove's edge, charming in its simplicity and filled with potential. As she bookmarked it, an empowering realization took hold. This would be her sanctuary, untouchable and entirely hers. Lydia and Nolan continued with their scheduled payments, occasionally trying to renegotiate the terms by citing countless reasons of financial burden. Brooke stepped in with unwavering resolve, reminding them of their pact. Deviations meant consequences, consequences they couldn't afford to face. Contact from Lydia was sparse, reduced to obligatory check-ins that veiled her ulterior motives. On one occasion, with strained sincerity, Lydia ventured, "We've learned our lesson. I hope someday we can move past this." Harper's response was direct, devoid of the sugar-coated deflection of yesteryear. "Moving on starts with accountability, Lydia. Complete what you started." Her voice rang with the steely edge of determination. The line trembled with silence before Lydia retorted a hasty goodbye. Guilt didn't nod Harper this time. She reveled in the unburdening relief of self-assuredness. Sierra's laughter, much like the flicker of a candle in a cozy room, filled the space one celebratory evening. Holding glasses up in a salute to newfound freedom, Sierra complimented, "You know, I've never seen you like this. Confident looks good on you." "I've realized that standing my ground doesn't equate to being unkind," Harper replied, her smile warm and genuine. "It simply makes me whole." "And you, my friend, are pretty fantastic," Sierra quipped with a playful wink. Their laughter, a balm for the past's wounds, illuminated the shared joy of Harper's journey. A few weeks later, Harper found herself parked across from the small dwelling she hoped to call home. She surveyed it through the windshield, imagining its rooms filled with her life, her dreams, and her future. This house wasn't just a shelter, it was a monument to her perseverance and tenacity. Thoughts of her father flooded in, vivid yet comforting. He had worked tirelessly, instilling within her the values and security she would one day need to uphold herself. Lydia and Nolan had attempted to undermine that legacy, but they hadn't succeeded. Underneath the expanse of the Ashgrove sky, Harper knew her father would be proud, not just of the roof she'd claimed, but of the strength she'd cultivated within. Breathing in the promise of what lay ahead, Harper smiled. This was her life, hers to build and nurture, and no one could take it away.